The cafeteria plunged into a stunned hush as a roar. Anguished scream tore through the stagnant air, the sound of a man's dominance crumbling like brittle stone against the cold, unyielding floor. Every eye in the room snapped to Aisha Carter, the new girl, her braided hair swaying faintly as she towered over Reza, the prison's iron-fisted bully now reduced to a sobbing heap. Moments before, his tattooed fist had swung toward her with the force of a sledgehammer, a strike meant to crush her spirit and cement his reign. Now, he lay broken, tears streaming down his rugged face, his arm contorted by her iron grip, the crack of his defeat echoing in the silence. The inmates froze, forks suspended, breaths held as the question hung heavy. Who was this young woman whose quiet power had shattered the prison's hierarchy in a heartbeat? Aisha sat at a chipped cafeteria table, her orange jumpsuit draping loosely over her wiry frame. The fabric faded and frayed from countless cycles through the prison laundry. At 19, she was the newest arrival in this maximum security fortress, her presence marked by wary whispers and pitying glances from the other women. They sat in clusters, their own uniforms a uniform sea of orange, their faces etched with the scars of survival. Hollow cheeks, guarded eyes, hands that trembled slightly as they clutched plastic trays. The room itself was a grim tableau, barred windows streaked with grime, walls scarred with graffiti and peeling paint, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like a swarm of restless insects. Aisha ate with methodical precision, her dark eyes scanning the space, taking in every detail. The clink of spoons, the stale odor of reheated food, the distant hum of a guard's radio. Beneath her calm exterior pulsed a hidden strength, a past she guarded like a locked vault. Raza was the undisputed king of this concrete jungle, a towering figure whose very shadow seemed to darken the room. His broad shoulders rippled with muscle, covered in a sprawling tapestry of tattoos, eagles with wings spread wide, chains coiled around skulls, and jagged script that hinted at a life carved from violence. He'd earned his nickname with a shank fashioned from a cafeteria spoon, its edge honed to a razor's sharpness, a weapon he wielded with a grin that chilled the soul. For years, he'd ruled through fear, extorting meals, favors, and submission from anyone who dared cross him. The guards, worn down by apathy and low pay, turned a blind eye, their silence a tacit endorsement of his tyranny. When Aisha arrived, her youth and solitary demeanor painted her as an easy target. Reza's eyes locked onto her the moment she entered the yard, his lips curling into a predatory smirk as he signaled his crew, a pack of loyal thugs who mirrored his menace. The tension coiled tighter as Reza approached, his heavy boots thudding against the linoleum with the rhythm of a war drum. The other inmates shrank back, their movements subtle but telling, heads dipping, eyes flickering to their trays, breaths shallow. Aisha remained still, her spoon pausing mid-air, her gaze fixed on her food though her fingers tightened imperceptibly. Reza loomed over her, his shadow swallowing the table, his breath hot and sour as he leaned in. "New fish," he growled, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the room. Without warning, his meaty hand shot out, aiming to seize her hair and assert his dominance in one brutal motion. The air thickened, the clatter of trays fading into a dull roar as the room seemed to slow. Then, in a blur of motion, Aisha struck. Her hand snapped up, catching his wrist with a grip like steel, twisting it backward with a sickening crack that drew a collective gasp. Reza's knees buckled, his face contorting in agony as he hit the floor, tears streaming down his cheeks, a sound so foreign from the man who'd terrorized them all that it silenced the room. The guards reacted with a storm of shouts, their batons clanging against metal tables as they charged in, their faces set with grim determination. Aisha released Reza's arm, her expression a mask of calm as they seized her, the cold bite of handcuffs snapping around her wrists. The inmates watched, some with wide-eyed awe, others with a flicker of fear, as she was hauled away, her head held high despite the chaos. In solitary confinement, the walls closed in, the dim light casting long, jagged shadows across her face. The isolation gnawed at her, doubt seeping into her mind like a slow poison. Had she miscalculated? The punishment looming over her could shatter even the strongest will, yet deep within, a ember of resolve glowed, stoked by memories of battles fought and won in a life before these bars. Aisha's past was a labyrinth of resilience and sacrifice. She'd grown up on Chicago's South Side, raised by a single mother who'd instilled in her the art of survival. How to dodge a blow, how to stand when the world pushed back. But it was her time in the military that had forged her into something extraordinary. Enlisting at 17, she'd excelled in hand-to-hand combat, her small stature masking a precision and power that earned her respect among her peers. Her career ended abruptly with a wrongful conviction, a theft charge orchestrated by a corrupt officer she'd refused to bribe, a man whose greed had cost her everything. The injustice burned within her, a quiet rage that simmered beneath her stoic facade. The prison saw a criminal, she saw a soldier, stripped of rank but not honor, fighting for redemption in a place that offered only despair. Weeks stretched into a tense eternity, the prison simmering with unrest. Razor, humiliated and nursing a bruised ego, plotted his revenge, his crew spreading threats like a plague through the cell blocks. Aisha emerged from solitary, her body weary but her eyes sharp, scanning the yard with the vigilance of a seasoned warrior. The other inmates began to shift. Some offered cautious nods of respect, others whispered her name with a mix of fear and admiration. Then came the ambush. In the yard, under a sky heavy with grey clouds and the threat of rain, Razor and his gang cornered her. The crowd gathered, their breaths visible in the chill air, expecting a bloodbath. Razor's shank gleamed as he lunged, but Aisha was prepared. With a series of precise strikes, elbow to jaw, knee to rib, a palm heel to the nose, she dismantled them, her movements a symphony of controlled fury. Razor fell last, his body crumpling to the dirt, unconscious, his reign shattered by the girl he'd so gravely underestimated. The twist arrived in a letter slipped under her cell door, its edges frayed from its journey. It was from a military lawyer, bearing irrefutable evidence of her innocence. Witness statements, surveillance footage, proof of the frame job that had stolen her freedom. The charges were under review, her release a possibility that sent ripples through the prison. The guards grew uneasy, their authority questioned, while the inmates watched her with a new reverence. Aisha remained stoic, her fight now a symbol for every soul crushed by injustice within these walls. On the day of her release, she walked out, the sun piercing through the clouds as if to welcome her back, her steps steady and sure. On the prison steps, a crowd of former inmates gathered, their eyes alight with a fragile hope. Aisha turned, offering a nod to the women she'd inspired, a silent vow that their stories were not yet finished. She vanished into the city, a silhouette of strength against the urban sprawl, her legacy carved into the prison's history. A crack in the system widened into a path for others to follow.